2 preseason games, 2 beatdowns on the boards, and the same problem showing up every single time. The Indiana Fever's forwards can't shoot from the outside, so defenders don't have to guard them, and that stops every driving lane Caitlin Clark and Kelsey Mitchell try to use. The Fever are essentially handing opponents a blueprint for shutting them down, and coach Steph White knows it. But while the front office was supposed to be solving this with a 6'4" sharpshooter named Justine Pissott, she's now injured, and apparently hinting that the story the team is putting out isn't exactly accurate. This situation is messier than anyone is reporting, and we're getting into all of it. The preseason disasters, the roster construction mishaps, and whether Cameron Brink could step in to fix this roster before the season actually matters. Do you think the Indiana Fever front office is fumbling it this season? Let me know down in the comments below.
The Indiana Fever appeared to be up to their usual tricks. I told y'all something smelled fishy about this whole injury situation with Justine Pissott. It looks like she's taken to social media to air some things out.
Dallas grabbed 45 rebounds against Indiana. The Fever grabbed 26. Sit with that for a second, because a 19 rebound gap doesn't happen because one team tried harder or got lucky on a few bounces. That kind of gap happens because one team is built for the way basketball gets played right now and the other one isn't.
Aaliyah Boston not in the lineup yesterday, and this team got dominated on the glass 45-26. You add in AB's career average of 8 rebounds, we would have gotten dominated 45-34. Not going to win many competitive games like that. Can we luck out in the regular season and just beat up on some bottom tier teams? I'm sure. But when we come across the Las Vegas Aces of the world, the Atlanta Dreams of the world, the New York Liberties of the world, the Los Angeles Sparks of the world, well, now we need to start asking, are we tall enough to go up against some of these better teams?
And what makes it worse is that this wasn't a one-game fluke. The New York Liberty came into the first preseason game and did the exact same thing on the boards before Dallas even got a chance. 2 different teams, 2 different rosters, 2 completely different styles of play, and both of them went into Indiana's paint and owned it. When one team beats you on the glass, you can blame matchups or a bad night. When 2 teams beat you on the glass in back-to-back games the same exact way, that's your roster telling you something. Indiana's front court rotation right now is Monique Billings, Maisha Hines-Allen, Michaela Timpson, and Damiris Dantas. And with Aaliyah Boston sitting out, none of those 4 do anything that forces a defender to step away from the basket. Not one of them is a threat from the perimeter, so opposing bigs never have to chase them to the 3-point line, which means every time a shot goes up, the other team's forwards and centers are already planted near the rim, already in rebounding position, while Indiana's forwards are still trying to figure out where to go. That's not a rotations problem. That's what happens when your entire front court belongs near the basket and nobody is pulling defenders away from it.
In which the Indiana Fever, preseason or not, got absolutely crushed by what we believe is going to be one of the worst teams in the league. But I got to tell you, when it was starters versus starters, it didn't turn out so well. It did not turn out so well. And many fans today are screaming from the top of the mountain what they've been saying since the draft. We got absolutely destroyed on the boards last night. Destroyed.
Indiana's projected 12-person roster also carries 7 guards, most of them under 6 feet tall. So when the Fever send a forward to the glass, there isn't enough size or length to win those battles against teams that actually have bigs who can rebound. The Liberty used their length at the forward spots to physically push Indiana's rotation around, and then Dallas came in and did it a different way, using speed and relentless activity to grab offensive boards and turn them into second-chance points that kept the Fever from ever stringing together a run. Steph White didn't dance around it after the game either. She pointed directly at defensive rebounding and transition defense as the areas that burned them. And the frustration in how she talked about it wasn't the kind of frustration you hear when a coach thinks her team just needs to execute better. It sounded like a coach who sees a structural problem, one that effort and film sessions won't fully fix, and she's right.
I felt like we were disconnected on the defensive end of the floor. We weren't moving when the ball moves. And then we were standing watching. I mean, they crushed us on the glass. I thought we got out-toughed. I thought that their levels of effort or levels of urgency, I should say, was different than ours. And we can't have that.
Boston being out makes the short-term picture uglier, no question. But even when she comes back healthy, the spacing problem is still there because Boston herself is a traditional interior player. She catches in the post, she finishes around the rim, she works through contact inside, and she's great at all of it. What she needs to do that effectively is room, and right now, nobody else on Indiana's front court pulls a single defender away from the paint to give her that room. When Boston catches a post entry with help defense already collapsing before she can make her first move, that's not Boston playing poorly. That's her teammates not creating any reason for defenders to be anywhere other than exactly where they are.
A lot of people were pointing out the Fever wanting to have this short squad. This team's got no length. None. Justine Pissott, she may not even make the team. We're starting to wonder, does Stephanie White want her on the team or not? Right here, of course, it was a 95-80 game, 45 rebounds to 26.
So to really understand why Justine Pissott matters so much to this roster and why the Cameron Brink conversation is picking up steam, you need to understand what a stretch 4 actually does and why Indiana's current forwards are basically the opposite of that. A stretch 4 is a power forward who can step out to the three-point line and actually make the shot. And when a defender has to follow them out there, the paint opens up. That's it. That's the whole concept. One player standing beyond the arc forces one big defender to leave the basket. And suddenly, there's a lane where there wasn't one before. A post-up opportunity where help defense used to be waiting.
You have to have somebody at that 4 and 5 that is stretching the floor. All right, that's why I say all that. You have to have somebody at that 4 and 5 to stretch that floor. Because the WNBA is literally turning into the NBA. It literally is, man. It's just too much talent to have bigs on the floor together that can't shoot. It's too much talent for that. The defense can just clog that paint, as we saw last night, as we saw last year. You know, it's going to continue to happen.
For Indiana, that concept matters more than almost anything else right now because of who their two best players are. Clark is most dangerous when she can get downhill with space in front of her, and Boston is most effective when she catches in the post with one defender on her instead of two. Both of those things require a forward who pulls a big away from the basket. Without that, Clark drives into bodies, and Boston catches with help already in her face before she can put the ball on the floor. Billings, Hines-Allen, Timpson, and Dantas are all traditional bigs, and none of them have a perimeter shot that defenders lose sleep over. So the defenders assigned to them just stay in the paint. They don't have to move. They can stand right in the spots where Clark wants to attack and where Boston needs room to operate. And Indiana can't do anything about it because nobody on the floor is making them leave. Against the Liberty, Clark drove into traffic that had no business being that heavy given the matchup, and it wasn't because New York's guards were great at stopping penetration. It was because New York's forwards never had to go anywhere, so they were already there. Against Dallas, it happened again. Different personnel, same result.
And I have to let y'all know, man, when I saw it, I said, wow, we have another 6-1 in our front court. Look, fam, this didn't make sense to me, okay? She's not a floor stretcher. She's strong. She gets down in the paint. She gets dirty, right? I get all that. She can protect Caitlin. Trust me, I understand all of that, y'all. But at some point, we have to worry about the skill. We have to worry about what the Indiana Fever really need, man. You really have another Natasha Howard situation, but shorter when you have Hines on the floor.
What makes this genuinely frustrating is that Clark creates exactly the spacing problem for opposing defenses that Indiana's forwards don't create for anyone. Defenses have to chase Clark everywhere on the perimeter because leaving her open from anywhere beyond half court is basically handing Indiana points. She demands attention, but Indiana's forwards demand nothing from the other team's bigs. So the floor is lopsided in the worst possible way. Indiana defends the perimeter, and Indiana also gets its own paint clogged. The Fever's offense isn't broken because Clark or Boston or Mitchell are struggling. It's broken because the roster is built in a way that puts defenders exactly where Indiana's best players need them not to be. And no amount of effort or play calling fixes that without a different kind of forward on the floor. Indiana's front office drafted someone specifically for this role in the second round. A 6'4" sharpshooter with a 7-foot wingspan out of Vanderbilt, and somehow they're already mishandling her.
Tall enough to go up against some of these better teams. The answer that I see, and I've been saying this all offseason, we need more. We need more size. We need an adequate backup to AB. We need a starting caliber power forward. And the Indiana Fever and the Indiana Fever media, they're running cover for this Justine Pissott injury. Justine Pissott comes out and says, don't believe everything the media says.
Justine Pissott is 6 feet 4 inches with a 7-foot wingspan. She shot threes at a high rate coming out of Vanderbilt, and Indiana drafted her in the second round specifically because they needed a forward who could pull defenders away from the basket. That's not a coincidence. That's a front office identifying their own problem and drafting the solution.
She's a very difficult matchup. You put your guard on her and you try to deny her on the perimeter. She can go down on a low block and post you up. You put your big kid on her so she can't post you up, and she's going by you off the dribble. She's a nightmare.
Growing up, the more and more people know that I'm a shooter, I need to do other things instead of just being able to shoot. I would also spend hours and hours working on ball handling. When everyone's out partying or whatever, I'd always have to make sacrifices to work in the gym and get better.
It's her love for the game. She is really just a great worker. Her offensive game is outstanding. She's the best shooter that I've ever coached.
At Vanderbilt, Pissott wasn't just standing in the corner waiting for kickouts either. She guarded multiple positions because her length let her cover ground that shorter forwards simply can't cover. And that wingspan causes real problems for WNBA forwards who aren't used to seeing a 6'4" shooter who can also contest their shot on the other end. So she brings shooting and defensive versatility in one player, which is exactly what Indiana's front court is missing right now. Her debut against the Liberty made that obvious almost immediately. Defenders had to step out and actually guard her on the perimeter, and the moment that happened, there was more room near the basket for Clark to attack and for Boston to work. That's not a small thing. That's the entire offensive concept Indiana's been missing across 2 preseason games, and a rookie showed it in her first WNBA appearance.
A 6'4" shooter is tough. It is really tough, especially a 6'4" shooter who doesn't see contests. Like, legitimately does not see contests. Like, it's scary how quick the trigger is from Justine Pissott. Like, that trigger's kind of crazy. And then, obviously this one here, she doesn't even see the contest. That could have been an and one. Like, that could have been an and one right there. Like, that was there were some impressive shots.
So what did Indiana do with a player who proved her value in Game 1? They put her on a development contract instead of a standard roster deal, which means Pissott sits in a completely different contract category with a 14-day exclusivity window before other teams can start pursuing her. Indiana drafted a forward who directly solves their biggest roster problem, watched her perform in her first game, and then left her in the most fragile roster spot available. Kelly Krauskopf and Amber Cox made that call. This isn't an unnamed front office decision floating around in the abstract. Those are the 2 people running this organization. And that's the decision they landed on.
Her range is unlimited at 6'4". You know, she's just a tremendous shooter. She's improved the rest of her game, her offense and defense. Her passion for being excellent is what impresses me the most.
I can't tell you the last time I've been out. I feel like all my friends tell me to go out with them, and I'm never out. I'm always in the gym, getting shots up, watching film. I love it.
And now Pissott is injured. The quotes are intentional because she's been posting on social media in a way that strongly suggests the injury story isn't the full picture, and she's not being vague about it. She's pushing back on the narrative being put out about her situation, firing back at a story that apparently doesn't match what she's actually experiencing. A rookie on a development contract doesn't usually go public with that kind of energy unless something feels wrong about how she's being handled.
I feel like the Indiana Fever are lying about Justine Pissott's leg injury. I feel like they are hiding her because they don't want to commit to giving her a full contract to be on the 12-player roster. They want her to be on that developmental contract. And I think that they know, after that game 1 versus New York, they know that if this girl continues to log minutes in these games, somebody is going to covet her. Somebody is going to snatch her off of.
If Pissott ends up signing a standard contract with another team because Indiana moved too slowly or too cautiously, or just didn't prioritize locking her in, that's not a bad break. That's the Fever front office handing a stretch 4 to a competitor while their own team is getting out-rebounded by 19 points and watching Clark drive into packed paint every possession. Some other team's coaching staff is going to figure out exactly how to use a 6'4" shooter with a 7-foot wingspan, and Indiana will watch it happen from the other bench. The new CBA's development contract structure gives teams flexibility, but that flexibility goes both ways, and right now Indiana seems to be using it in a way that protects the organization's options while leaving Pissott exposed. Raven Johnson has been genuinely exciting as a defensive force and secondary playmaker, and the guard rotation because of her looks much better than it did a year ago. But Johnson doesn't pull a single big defender away from the paint. Guard depth doesn't fix a front court spacing problem. You can't stack one position and ignore another and expect the math to work out.
I feel like they're lying about this injury because they're hiding her. I just got to keep it real. I got to keep it real. And let's take a look at what Justine Pissott also had to say. She said, let's not always believe the media, with the puzzle face. Now, I don't know necessarily what she means by this, but she could be saying, hey, we can't believe what the Fever are putting out there in the media. I'm fine. I can play. She came out and let us know, I don't care about no developmental contract.
Pissott's skill set directly unlocks what Clark and Boston can do at their best. And the way Indiana is handling her right now looks less like a roster plan and more like an organization that doesn't fully recognize what it's sitting on. Cameron Brink is a stretch 4 with WNBA experience, and she can rebound, defend multiple positions, and hit threes at a rate that forces opposing bigs to actually follow her out to the perimeter. That's the same profile as Pissott, but Brink already knows how the pro game moves, already understands the speed and physicality of WNBA bigs, and that experience matters when you're trying to fix a roster problem before a real season starts.
Is Cameron Brink available? Is there a Damaris Dantas and a first-round pick for a Cameron Brink available? Is there a Damaris Dantas and 2 first rounds for Cameron Brink? Is there a Damaris Dantas and Michaela Timpson for a Cameron Brink trade? I'm just asking questions. I'd take Cam Brink as a backup 5. I'd take Cam Brink. But you ready for something even better? Cam Brink at the 5, AB at the 4.
The trade conversation around Brink landing in Indiana isn't just speculation floating around on basketball Twitter. It's a direct response to a roster gap that 2 preseason games put on full display. And Brink fits that gap almost perfectly because she addresses size, spacing, and rebounding all at once instead of fixing one thing and leaving 2 others broken. For Clark specifically, what Brink changes is simple. Put a forward on the floor who can hit threes, and the defense has to send a big out to guard her, and that's 1 fewer body in the paint when Clark attacks downhill. A contested layup becomes an open one. A drive that currently ends with Clark getting fouled because there's nowhere to go suddenly becomes a kick out to a shooter. And Clark doesn't have that option right now because nobody on Indiana's front court pulls anyone away from the basket.
AB would be mauling most of the power forwards in this league if she's going up against 4s. Defensively, it would help us out having a real rim protector that can swat shots at the rim like Cam Brink. It would help us rebounding-wise to have another big next to AB to help clean up the glass. Cameron Brink running the floor with a pass from CC. Ooh, I like to see that.
For Boston, it's even more direct. Boston catches in the post at her best when there's 1 defender on her and room to move. But right now, she's catching with help defense already sliding over before she can make her first move, because Indiana's other forwards give opposing bigs 0 reason to leave. Brink on the floor changes that the moment she checks in because her defender has to follow her, and suddenly, Boston has the space she needs to actually go to work. Adding Brink isn't free though. There's a trade cost, there are cap implications, and Indiana would need to move pieces to make the numbers work. So it's not a simple phone call and a handshake. But the alternative is watching a team built around Caitlin Clark and Aaliyah Boston get out-rebounded by 19 points again, while the front office waits for development contracts to sort themselves out.
The Fever front office need to make some cuts and trades expeditiously. That was painful to watch. I hope CC is not re-injured. If you can't find some rebounds, there won't be many wins this season. We need more size. Maisha Hines-Allen, she's not size. She's strong. She's thick. She ain't tall. She ain't a rebounder.
The Wings game actually handed Indiana a blueprint for what they're missing. Dallas leaned on outside shooting, guard depth, and pace to generate easy looks, and Paige Bueckers dropped 20 points partly because Dallas had the spacing to let her operate freely. That's the exact environment Indiana wants to create for Clark, but can't build right now because the front court won't cooperate. If Indiana trades for Brink and locks Pissott into a real standard contract and keeps Boston healthy, the starting lineup looks genuinely different. Clark and Mitchell running the backcourt, Boston and Brink up front, and Pissott coming off the bench as a floor-stretching forward who can also guard bigger wings because of her length. Raven Johnson coming off the bench as a defensive disruptor and secondary playmaker makes that rotation deep, in a way the Fever haven't been in years. And that's the version of this team the 2026 window actually calls for.
I swear to God, if y'all keep Demario Stantes and cut Justine Pissott, y'all are so damn incompetent. Woo! Fire the Fever front office and Stephanie White. It is going down. That was painful to watch. I hope Cece was not re-injured. And you want to sell tickets? Nobody wants to watch Stephanie White's show.
Clark is already on an MVP trajectory. Boston is a legitimate force when she's healthy. Mitchell and Sophie Cunningham and Lexi Hull give Indiana more than enough shooting and toughness on the perimeter to compete with anyone in the league. None of that firepower translates into wins, though, if defenders can plant themselves in the paint and never move because Indiana's forwards don't make them. The 4 position is where this offense either opens up or stays stuck. And right now, it's stuck. Clark, Boston, Mitchell, and a coaching staff that runs a modern offense. Indiana has all of that, but they're pairing it with a front court that 2 different teams just took apart in back-to-back preseason games. Pissott is either going to be the moment Krauskopf and Cox got serious about fixing the 4 position, or she's going to be the player another team signs while Indiana keeps getting out-rebounded by 19. Do you think the Indiana Fever front office is fumbling it this season? Let me know down in the comments below. Like, subscribe, and turn on all notifications so you never miss out. Click the video on the screen, and we will see you in the next one.